So my name's Yvie Holder, and I was born in London, ended up living most of my life in Hull, just 40 miles down the road, and came to the University of York in 1973. Never imagined I would stay in the York area for the rest of my life, but met my future husband there, and we ended up working and having a family in the York area. My father is from Trinidad, and it was his work that took him to Hull, which is why we've ended up there. And my mother was from East Anglia.
Looking back, are there happy places, times, moments that you can reflect on which make you feel good?
Something from childhood, which I think the further away I get from it, the more special it seems, was a visit from Trinidad in the 1960s, a first visit to our home of an uncle. So my dad's sort of closest brother, he was one of a family of 11. He brought a crate of mangoes. And not only was it incredibly exciting that he came to visit, but it was our first taste of mangoes. And I'm not sure that Dad perhaps had any since he'd left Trinidad, I don't know, because there weren't any local shops that sold anything like aubergines or green peppers or any of the things that we take for granted now. So I remember this wonderful moment where we all gathered in the kitchen, and he asked for Mum's sharpest knife and showed us how to slice up this mango and gave us all pieces, and you know, this wonderful messy business of eating a mango with this unusual flavour and the fibres, and him finding it really hilarious that, you know, the mess we were making and how much we were enjoying it. The visits from our family abroad were really incredibly special occasions.
I've known you as a community champion for diversity, as an author, as a community activist. What are the things that give you most pride in your achievements?
I'll come to the writing first, just because it's something that I've always done since I was a child. I mean, I loved writing and telling stories and writing poetry from when I was about 6, and I think at infant and junior school I must have had teachers who inspired me, and that stayed with me. And then in my retirement I decided to take that much more seriously and go to classes and write poetry, and I've written a memoir which went out to friends and family to do with my family history, which is a complicated one of 4 years in a children's home and adoption, semi-adoption, because my father is my father, and the route I took to sort of understanding more about my history. But I'm writing quite a lot of poetry to do with that past, as well as anything, nature, climate, social justice, all sorts of things. And I suppose one of the things that gives me pleasure, has given me pleasure in my work, is being able to communicate, listen to people, hear what their issues are, and then see if I can do something about them, which is where, as you say, the sort of community work comes in. Whether it was standing on a street corner in Acomb, at shops near Acomb shops where I used to live, chatting to some older people once, saying, look, where are we supposed to go for our enjoyment if we don't want to go into York in an evening because it feels frightening? What are we supposed to do? And so we came up with the idea of a once-a-week club, which was held in one of the church halls in Acomb, called Acomb Wednesday Afternoon Club, because Wednesday afternoon was when the shops were closed and there was nothing to do and they could come. And it was for lonely and elderly people, and it became a thriving community resource for about 15 years, and I chaired the steering committee and got funding for it. So from that kind of thing, just, you know, that incidental conversation on a street corner, to setting up and running my own training and consultancy organisation, looking at equality and so on. Training organisations or doing confidence building with groups of individuals, trying to help and empower people. Sometimes it was something like, well, we've got a set of administrators who work in school offices, and they're not very confident and they get treated quite shabbily. Can you do a session for them? So it was going along and talking to them about effective communication and confidence building and assertiveness. And so, there was a lovely sort of range of things that I did, as well as training chairs of boards like the North Yorkshire Probation Service or governors and at senior levels, trying to develop strategy and policy. So it was the sort of personal end as well as the more, if you like, political end of the work that I did, all of which I enjoyed.
So how has the world changed since you were young?
We all know more about each other. I mean, the internet has made it, and TV and so on, communications has made it so that we have to know more. We can't help but know more about the world. People are much more interested, comfortable with what we call diversity, with difference, with people's differences, than they used to be. And they're less ignorant than they used to be. But there are problems and issues that still need to be addressed. I think people are comfortable if their own needs are being addressed, and they're prejudiced if they feel their own needs aren't being looked after. And so we have to look at what more we can do about that. So I think we need collectively as a society to find ways of listening more and find ways of enabling people to come up with solutions that will work for them rather than organisations telling them how it's going to be.
I think you're moving us into the next question, Yvie, because I'd really be interested in hearing your aspirations and dreams, both at a societal level, but also personal.
I was quite inspired this morning hearing Amanda Gorman, the young US poet who's done this wonderful poem that refers to empathy being so important, and it prevents hate. And it's something about, we have to aspire towards love because that will enable us. And that's been in the back of my mind this morning. But in terms of my own, I'm hoping that my writing progresses. I would like to get that out there more. I'm working on a full collection of poetry, which I'm trying to get published. I've got quite a lot of poems out and about online and in anthologies. And perhaps do something more with the memoir and get that more public, or put it out in some other way, through drama or blogs or whatever. Just thinking about how, as Andrea Levy, the writer, said, we should be putting our diaspora backgrounds, our Caribbean, mixed UK Caribbean backgrounds, back into the mainstream of British history, where they belong. And one way of doing that for me is through writing and putting on events and talking and so on.
What role has community played in your life, and how have you contributed to it?
Community's been really important to me. I feel that where I was brought up in Hull, my parents were both involved in community all the time, one way or another, whether it was through church. I was in Brownies and Guides back in the day. We were always doing things for and with other people. Always worked with other people, for example, establishing York Racial Equality Network, which has lasted for about 30 years. Working, as a school governor back in the day. I've always liked doing things collaboratively. I always feel that if something needs doing, or you've identified a gap and you could help to fill it, you need 2 or 3 people with the same sort of vision, and then off you go. You can have conversations and you can make those things happen. They might take years, but they can happen. So that's partly what community has meant for me, working with other people to enable ourselves and to enable some aspect of society that perhaps wasn't there before. And I think one of my sort of dreams really is that the next generation, who are every bit as capable as any generation that's gone before, recognise some of our achievements and some of the work that we've done in the past, and recognise that they are building on those things.